I know. There wasn't much of this that wasn't branded really bad idea. But despite that, I had to admit that there was something about her that made me want to help. Okay, she wasn't a normal pony, but it felt so much like she was lost. And I simply couldn't believe this goddess gave a twig about a bounty. I'm damaged goods traveling with broken wares and trying to save the wasteland.
Where does it say that every pony I associate with closely has to be scarred, betrayed, crazy, or something else?
I wondered aloud. While I might have wanted to talk to Glory first, Rampage was the first I came across. She was lying on a stone with her forehoofs crossed, resting her chin on top of her hoof claws and looking down at the town.
Hey,
she said sullenly.
So, he showed you the clubhouse, huh? Do I still have my old room, or did he turn it into a den? Actually, he gave me the clubhouse. So, yeah. You get your old room back, Rampage,
I said as I joined her on the rock.
So,
I said as evenly as I could. She didn't look back as she said in just as even a voice.
So, did you fucking kill a foal, Rampage?
I asked softly as I looked at the town.
Probably. That's what every pony tells me, anyhow. My hoof marks on the body,
she replied, her pink eyes downcast.
Then what was that you were doing with Thorn?
I asked, my magic pulling the heavy revolver from my bag. If I shot her fast enough and managed to get some rounds lodged in her brain.
Being happy. Is that so hard to understand?
She said as she sat up.
I love kids. I really love them. I look at all this shit, and the one thing that gives me the slightest hope is that some foal might grow up and be able to do something about it. I'd come across some fucker who wants to hurt a kid, and I eviscerate him or her. No regret. No hesitation. Because as fucked up as the wasteland is, nothing makes it worse than what we do to each other. So what happened then? I don't remember. It was a boring day. We didn't have any pilgrims. Just the usual ponies in town. I went to bed and woke up with the foal beside me. Body beaten and neck crushed. I was so mad. So hurt. So everything. A lot of the kids stuck up for me. But Priest couldn't. I couldn't either.
She hung her head.
I know what I remember. But I also remember the sight of her lying there. I still see her, even with my eyes closed. Even with my eyes gouged out. Every second is frozen in my mind.
I could relate. I really could.
Until we figure it out, if I see you alone with a foal, I'm going to take you out.
Then I frowned, rolling my eyes as I looked up at the great vasty badness above. Ooh, mistake. Big mistake. Falling up now. I clenched my eyes shut for a moment.
Oh, really? And how are you going to go about doing that?
She asked with a little smirk.
Well, you were found in a balefire crater,
I said as I grinned at her.
Yeah, but you don't have a balefire megaspell,
she said with a snort, and then looked at me with a touch of uncertainty.
Do ya? Oh, just give me some time.
I grinned, and she smiled back. Maybe with a touch of unease. Hey, it wasn't completely impossible.
So, on a totally unrelated note, have you ever heard of alicorns in the wasteland?
Alicorns?
Here?
She sat up.
I've heard they're around other parts of Equestria, but Hoofington's never had 'em before.
She looked at me suspiciously, then gasped.
Wait. There's one here, isn't there?
She suddenly grinned.
Did you make friends with it?
I blinked, flushing as her grin grew, and she cackled.
Oh, sweet Celestia, Blackjack. Do you have a pet hellhound or something? Maybe keep a rad scorpion in a shoebox? Only you could make friends with something that practically every pony in the wasteland thinks is a monster. I made friends with you, didn't I?
Rampage looked at me with a slightly less snarky smile as I went on with all the smugness I could muster.
You know, it could be that I'm just using her. This could all be an elaborate ruse. I can do ruses, you know.
I started with a snort, then sneezed hard, blasting my hoof with streamers of snot.
Ew.
Rampage smiled sardonically.
Right. You are clearly the puppet master. We are all your puppets.
She rose to her hooves, looking back at the cottage as she squinted up the hillside.
Well, I guess I should go meet this monster. Don't fight her, Rampage.
I warned as sternly as I could manage, scraping the snot off my hoof on the rock.
She's strange. She's an alicorn. Isn't that required?
Rampage asked.
It's kind of like becoming a Reaper or a Steel Ranger. You have to be just a little bit off to make the cut. I know her,
I said sharply. Then I sighed as I sat.
I just don't know where I know her from. Something about her is familiar. It doesn't make any sense. I just look at her and feel something. You're hopeless,
Rampage said with a shake of her head.
Fine. I'll play nice.
She swayed her glittery razor-wire wrapped tail.
Oh, and, Chess Master Blackjack, you have snot on your butt.
I glanced back behind me, ears flattening as I glared at her.
It's only because I'm plotting the plots of Plotness,
I said as she walked towards the cottage.
Just you wait. No pony's gonna see this plot coming.
Once I dealt with the boogers on my butt, honestly, I had a cold. Couldn't they cut me a break? I headed into town, where I heard the delightful sound of Charity getting murdered. Okay, technically it wasn't delightful, but could any pony blame me if I did feel just a little bit pleased?
You're trying to take advantage of me.
Charity cried as she stood on a stack of crates.
I work, and I slave, and I try so hard to get caps for the town. And you want 30 caps for a landmine?
She sat hard, bawling as 20 sorted foals and fillies watched on.
Why are you being so mean to me?
I am not trying to take advantage of you, P21 sputtered, red in the face. 20 caps is too low. Even 30 is too low, he protested as he raised his hooves. Oh, stop crying. I'm just trying for what's fair. 25 caps. 23.
You're trying to rob me. You rob little ponies. How can you be so mean?
The unicorn bawled as she rubbed her eyes. P21 wavered and then slumped. Fine. 20 caps. And just like that, the tears stopped and she said happily,
Deal.
Hopping off the crates, she trotted towards her bag, muttering,
Stable ponies is so easy.
She is not a pony, P21 muttered. She's some kind of bottle cap collecting monstrosity.
She'll own the wasteland someday,
I agreed solemnly as I sat beside him.
So, what'd you buy?
Believe it or not, these fillies have dug up some decent stuff. I was just hoping to hang on to some more mines rather than sell them all, he said as she returned with a huge stack of caps and set them on the crates. Is that all of my caps? All 2,000?
You don't trust me?
She asked, her eyes going wide with hurt. He smirked and narrowed his eyes. Oh, no you don't. You're not getting me with the waterworks this time. And then Charity sighed, a soft little heartbroken catch in her voice.
Oh, I knew I'd never get away with it. I mean, we try so hard to get ahead here, but I know all too well how tough things are.
She turned and started to walk slowly back towards her store.
I'll get the rest of them.
It sounded like he demanded her prized teddy bear or something. Even I looked at him with disdain, and these were our caps. He lowered his head and gave a grunt of defeat. Never mind, he muttered, putting the caps in his saddlebags.
Come again!
She replied brightly as she and 4 other crusaders pushed the cart loaded with landmines into the post office.
You should have seen me the first time. She charged me for a bottle of water that she gave as a gift to Priest,
I replied, looking at the boxes.
So what'd you buy?
Some ammunition, a magazine extender for your 12 gauge, some more dynamite for me, and some barding for you and Glory.
What about you?
I asked as I nudged open the box and pulled out some light black leather armor. A little closer to raider fashion than I liked. A pony could get shot wearing this if she wasn't careful. If I get hit at all, it's 'cause I got noticed. I'll just stay nice and quiet in the background while you 3 get shot up. That way, it's my own damned fault if something happens to me. I looked at the black leather barding.
Well, I suppose it'll do till we get to Megamart. I wonder if we can spray paint "Good guys, don't shoot us" on it.
He looked at me with a smirk. Blackjack. That's Glory's barding.
This?
I looked at it in shock.
P21, she can't wear this!
It was ugly. I could only hope it was some sort of disguise or something. It's what she asked for, Blackjack, he replied with a shrug. She wanted something that looked like she could kick tail. Personally, I think it's going to take more than clothes for her to be able to do that. No, your barding's in the other box. I put the black leather aside. Honestly, it looked more like it was for sex work in Stable 69 than something Glory should be wearing to stay alive. I levitated that box aside and opened up the metal crate beneath it. Black and blue beauty greeted my eyes. This armor wasn't just reinforced security barding. It was actual combat police armor, like I'd seen on the back pages of the Ironshod firearms catalogs. Magically treated black ceramic plates on a matte blue Kevlar jacket. This was armor for my whole body, and wouldn't leave my belly exposed. Blue blood couldn't... Okay. Not thinking about it. Not thinking about guts spilling out all... I smacked myself hard, much to the alarm of P21. I took a deep breath, trying to will my heart to slow.
Sorry, just making sure this wasn't a dream.
He looked skeptical as I pulled out the pieces of blue armor and saw that, to make the icing perfect, Age of Security had already been printed upon the plates.
Oh, I could kiss you,
I said as I hefted the armor. Yeah, please don't, he said, raising his hoof to ward me away as I wiggled into the combat armor. Does it fit all right? I blinked and then looked back at him.
You know what's weird? Barding always fits. I have to wonder if there's some kind of one-size-fits-all spell made into these things.
Cinching it up under my belly, I had to admit that it was a little heavy, but not as much as the reinforced security barding had been. It had a sling for a shotgun on the left side, and a loop for a baton that would hold my dragon claw on the right. It even had saddlebags with pockets for holding healing and restoration potions, as well as chems. As I redistributed my stuff, I told him about the Star House. He smiled, Then I told him about why Rampage hadn't been seen around town. He stopped smiling. And then I told him about Lakunai. He seemed more upset about her than about what Rampage had told me. How do you know this goddess thing isn't some kind of trick?
I gave her a chance to attack, and she didn't take it,
I replied as I snapped the combat helmet into place. Thankfully, my glasses still covered my faintly glowing eyes.
I don't know. She's strange. I want to figure her out.
He sighed. Does she seem like she has some kind of psychological or emotional problem that you think you can help her with? I sat, tapping my hooves in front of me as I flushed.
Maybe.
Of course she does. And is she sad? I rubbed my nose awkwardly and said,
A little. Maybe. Just a bit.
Blackjack? Are you trying to turn us into the deadliest band of angsty, whiny ponies to wander the wasteland?
Maybe,
I replied, and he sighed as he face-huffed.
What? It could work. Bad ponies could see us coming and go, "Oh, goddesses, no way I want to mess with them, because then she'll start crying, she'll be suicidal, and then he'll blow us all to the moon." I know I would not want to tangle with that.
He tried to suppress his laugh, shaking his head, and then he sighed. All right, just please keep on your hooves, and make sure this isn't another Latz or Caprice. That certainly helped sober me up a bit, and he passed me the 12-gauge ammo he'd picked up. Trust was good. Trust that gets 11 zebras executed. Not good. Speaking of zebras, I really didn't expect to see Sakashi kick Glory in the face when I encountered the pair. My eyes widened as I went for the Dragon Claw before a pink pony in my saddlebags bucked me upside my head, and I noticed Sakashi wasn't pressing her attack.
You are rushing, Fallen Bird. Do not be in such a hurry to hit me that you fail to connect,
the zebra said as Glory picked herself up out of the yellow grass. Sakashi glanced at me, her smile widening before looking back at Glory. The gray Pegasus hadn't noticed me approaching while she was picking herself out of the grass.
Why do you wish for this, Fallen Bird? You are not a fighter like your friends.
Glory shook herself hard.
I told you, I'm sick of being useless all the time.
Glory? Useless?
Back at the mansion, I survived only so long as Rampage was around. The second she wasn't, I got stuck in a stove,
she said as she started to shake.
I couldn't even help Blackjack against Blue Blood. He cut me without even looking back, and I just sat there as he gutted her. I nearly got her killed,
Glory shouted back.
It is a poor fighter who forsakes their strength for a weakness, though I know very funny stories of fighters who do just so,
the zebra said with a wistful smile.
Perhaps I should write a tale of the Fallen Bird, who wished to fight like the dogs because she thought her wings too weak.
Her green eyes looked back at Glory.
Ah, but how would the story end?
Glory panted and hung her head.
I don't want to hear stories. I saw what that slut was trying to pull. I knew it was Caprice and I didn't tell her. She does everything for me. She saved my life and I just stood there as she was dying in front of me on the road. Rampage got her to scalpel, not me. P-21 killed Blue Blood, not me.
She sat down hard, hanging her head as she started to cry.
I can't do anything. You caught me,
I said softly as I walked up beside her, taking off the helmet. Damn thing was uncomfortable.
Oh my, look at the sun. I believe I owe the Crusaders a story about two friends helping one another. Excellent story, very funny. Remind me to tell you sometime,
the zebra said as she turned and trotted away.
Such a pity I cannot hear what two friends say to one another.
I walked to her and lifted the black spiked barding from the bag.
So, I'm guessing this isn't some sort of disguise thing,
I said as I sat down beside her. She turned her head away from me.
And I'm guessing that fallen glory isn't so much about keeping your identity secret as it is trying to be all tough. I have to be tougher, Blackjack. For you.
She flushed as she stood.
You do everything. You get shot, blown up, cut up, hunted, and betrayed. And all I do is nothing. I feel like I'm still trapped in that oven and just waiting for that monster to eat me. Like I can't live if some pony doesn't come by and save me,
she said as she started to shake. She lifted her hooves, watching them tremble.
I can't even stop.
I did what worked for me. I hugged her. I held her, she quaked in my limbs. She just wanted to be stronger. She wanted to be better.
You help me, Glory. Whether it's with your beam guns or just with being good and loyal. You help me.
I stroked her mane and then looked into her eyes. Despite Priest's healing magic, a thin scar remained, running from her brow to her cheek. She'd nearly lost an eye to the strike. She kissed me. It was probably the most awkward kiss in the history of pony kisses. I was so shocked that I barely moved, and she pulled away, her budding hope crumbling in the face of my stupor.
I'm sorry, I guess I can't even control myself,
she muttered as she looked away.
No, I didn't know you felt that way.
I was certainly stunned by it. As awkward as the kiss had been, there was no mistaking the emotion that had been behind it.
And do you feel the same?
She asked in a tiny, hopeful voice. And if I was honest, I'd crush her.
I don't know how I feel, Glory. I know you like mares. You were with her, after all,
she said with a flush.
I could do that.
Oh, goddesses. Glory was actually trying to proposition me?
Caprice was sex. Mutual masturbation. She made me feel good, but nothing my own hoof couldn't do for me. We were just using each other,
I said as I struggled to somehow defuse this emotional dynamite factory before it blew up, and she was crying, or worse.
I don't want to use you like that, Glory.
And crush. She didn't have to say a word. She simply lowered her head, dropped her gaze. Her shoulders hunched and her front legs rubbed against each other.
I see. Sorry.
Ugh! Was that as annoying for every pony else when I did it?
No, Glory, you don't have to apologize. For anything.
I said as I hugged her as platonically as I could.
It's just... Yeah, I have sex with mares. And bucks. It's all fun, but... You're different. You're special, Glory, and... Every single pony I've been with was just sex. That's all it's ever been. If I were with you, if we were together, I'm afraid it'd be the same. Then you'd stop being my friend, and then you'd leave. And I don't want you to leave. So...
She fidgeted.
What now?
I sighed and chuckled.
I don't have a clue. I'm not the smart pony, remember?
Be kind.
Right now, it's something to think about. But what I'm more worried about is you feeling like you're useless. You're not useless, Glory. You're the only pony in the wasteland that has any clue how to deal with the raider disease. You keep me going when I'm doing everything short of falling on my face. Heck, even when I am falling on my face. I guess so. Though I don't know what good I am with the disease. I'd need a lab and months of work to come up with a treatment.
She looked at the black barding.
I'm just sick of seeing you getting hurt protecting others when I can't do anything to protect you. Don't worry about it. I'm security. It's part of the job,
I said, giving her the easiest going grin I could. She sighed and shook her head sadly.
Oh, Blackjack.
She was smiling. So why did it feel like I'd said the wrong thing? I told her about Rampage and Lacunae, and we were both grateful for a change in topic. Her caution mirrored P-21's, but she was far more interested in the Star House.
You say there are pictures there from the moon? From the actual moon?
In her excitement, she seemed to forget all about the awkward patch we'd stumbled upon.
Well, it looked like they were from the moon, and from the newspaper she'd kept it seemed like it. Why? Does it matter? Well, we thought that the Equestrian space program was a hoax, just a way to stir up public support during the war that got axed when it failed to produce weapons or a boost in morale like it was designed to. We didn't even know if Marigold existed or if the scandal was just a way for the program leaders to wash their hands of a wasted experiment. I mean, the launch center's real, though. I think there's a ghoul village there called Rocket Town. You can see it from the skyport, but I never thought in a million years that those rockets could actually fly. Apparently they did. Once.
I said, glad to see that she hadn't put on the dreadful barding, and happy to see she cheered up a bit.
What do a bunch of ghouls want with rockets? Oh, there's some sort of cult or something. Plan to fly to the great beyond or some far-off promised land. Since most of the space center is radioactive, we never went there. But Orion's herd is decent enough if you don't mind ghouls.
From her shiver, it was clear that there were some ghouls worth minding.
Well, let's get you some barding that's actually protective and not something that makes you look like a raider,
I said as we headed towards the post office. Harpika strolled along with the ghoul foals in 2 rows behind her, and she gave us a very soft and polite greeting. Since arriving, the little ghouls had been quite well behaved and seemed too scared to wander off. A world that was more than 4 walls was an intimidating concept. I knew that first hoof. Still, at least the Crusaders were friendly enough and interested both in them and me. A blue colt with a cutie mark of a pitcher of pouring water even played with my black and red streaked tail curiously. Inside the post office, my eyes met Charity's, and we narrowed our gazes in unison. I licked my lips. She chewed slowly on a candy cane sticking out the side of her mouth. I walked to the counter and set the barding on it.
I want to make an exchange.
She neither said a word nor took her eyes from mine, nor blinked. She just swung the candy cane around and pointed the tip at a sign on the counter that read, "All sales are final."
Look, I don't like you. You don't like me. I get that,
I said quietly as I pulled down my glasses a little to look her in the eye.
But see that Pegasus back there? That's a really nice Pegasus. I like her, and I want to keep her safe. That means dressing her in some barding that doesn't make her look like a raider. So I want an exchange.
She just chewed slowly on the end of her peppermint stick.
Your friend. She mute?
Huh?
Mute. Can she talk?
Charity demanded.
Yeah? Feeble-minded then?
The little filly queried.
No, but filly-phobic. Look.
Charity chewed up the rest of the peppermint stick.
I'm just trying to figure out, if this is for her, why are you the one doing the talking?
Glory blinked and then stepped up past me.
Hello? I need better armor than this,
she said as she pointed at the black barding.
Welcome to Charities, where we ain't,
she said with a polite smile.
You need better barding than this. Well, yes, please.
Glory said in surprise.
Something light.
Charity walked to a shelf behind the counter and pulled out something light blue. It had been patched up more than a few times, but it seemed tailored for Pegasi.
How's that?
The faded patch on the shoulder read, Equestrian Skyguard. She took it and looked it over, then back at me, then at Charity.
It's good. How much?
I braced myself.
We'll call it a swap. You need beam guns too, I hear.
My butt hit the ground about the same time as my jaw.
Beam pistols all right? Saddle rigged?
Glory smiled gratefully at the filly and nodded. The filly put 2 of the boxy weapons, minus mouth grips, on top of the barding.
400 caps. And I'll even throw in some gem cartridges.
Glory dug into her saddlebags for the caps as I just gaped.
Thank you. And thank you, Blackjack. Again. For everything.
She gave a little squeal.
Oh, I can't wait to rig these to my battle saddle.
I just stared at the filly behind the counter.
Why?
It was all I could say just now. The filly looked at me coolly.
She needed the deal. You and your friend didn't. You were just after the caps. So I was just after the caps. That's what Bottle Cap taught me.
She said before thumping her hoof on the counter.
Now are you going to buy something or am I going to charge you for loitering? 10 caps a minute starting now.
I ran for my wealth. I felt a little bit itchy. Not in a main sort of itchy so much as an it's been a good day and no pony shot at me kind of itchy. I was starting to feel a little bit overdue for something bad to happen to me. But the skies were dry, and most of the Crusaders and a few adults were getting ready for Rose's funeral in the afternoon. So why was I feeling so jumpy at everything being ordinary? Had I been so stressed for so long that I was starting to anticipate threats that weren't there? Then the Skywagon swooped over the town once, and before I knew it, my revolver was out. It was the Enclave. They'd finally sent a delivery wagon pulled by a ghoul Pegasus. Absolutely everything. Yes, I do deliveries. Was painted on the side. I looked at my gun and at the sight of a lavender filly climbing out of the back of the wagon and found myself starting to shake. Deus was dead. Blue Blood was dead. The Zodiacs hadn't jumped at me in a while, and I had yet to find out what monster of the day Sanguine had waiting for me in the wings. Just breathe.
I'll go get Charity, Ditzy.
The small lavender pony with the blonde mane called out as 3 or 4 Crusaders rushed to the wagon to help unload boxes. Slowly, I walked closer, looking at the ghoul. Her mane might almost be gone and her wings so much bone, but that googly-eyed expression fit the poster in the post office almost perfectly. Noticing me, she pulled out a piece of chalk from her bags and lifted a slate that hung from a string around her neck. She wrote on the slate and lifted it. Blackjack? Slowly, I trotted closer.
That's me.
Rubbing it clean, she dug into her bags for a folded piece of paper and passed it to me. I looked at her and then floated the note in front of me. Blackjack, I've made the arrangements with the person who can assist with your decryption. She's very secretive, but has always been trustworthy in our dealings. However, she operates under some paranoid rules. Ditzy will take you to her, and then back to chapel. You have to go alone and unarmed. When you reach the building, you'll have to go into a memory orb. Then, you'll be taken to her. Bottle Cap. I looked at the note, and then at Ditzy. She blinked her offset eyes at me, then gave me what I assumed was supposed to be a reassuring smile. I sighed and then coughed.
Okay. So I'm going with you then.
I had to admit, even for a trusting fool like me, there were a lot of things that could be going on. But the fact was that if I was going to find out what EC1101 was, and what Sanguine wanted it for, I'd have to trust them. I gave the Ghoul Pegasus a smile that she happily returned.
Okay. I'm going to tell my friends and drop off my stuff.
I pointed up the hillside to the southeast.
There's a house up there where you can pick me up in a little bit.
Ditzy looked where I pointed and then nodded. I quickly trotted away to look for my friends. I was pleasantly surprised to find all of them at the Star House. I was more surprised to find that no pony had killed each other. Lacoon and I sat by the stairs while Rampage cleared out her old room, and P-21 took priests. Glory was working on attaching her new beam pistols to her battle saddle. I had to admit, she looked a lot better in the Skyguard barding than that black monstrosity P-21 had bought for her. 5 ponies and only 4 bedrooms. Oh dear. I stamped my hooves loudly on the floor.
Well, good news, every pony.
Rampage peeked out at me.
You're pregnant.
I blinked and then scowled at the smirking Reaper.
No.
You're drunk? P-21 asked as he walked out with a box of priest's drawings balanced carefully on his back. You seem pretty happy, but more coherent than I anticipated.
No, I'm not drunk, Oh, please tell me you're not taking Buck again. I don't know if priests can heal the damage like Scalpel.
Glory fretted. I sat with a little scream of annoyance.
I am not pregnant, drunk, or high.
I took a deep breath.
I'm going on a little trip to get EC1101 decoded. Alone.
The 3 of them took it about as I expected. Trusting the Alicorn was bad enough. But now you're going someplace alone, unarmed, and unconscious. What if you're being sent to paradise? Deus might be dead, but Usri still has the caps to inspire all sorts of trouble. P-21 said sharply as he pointed to the door.
I trust Ditzy-Doo to get me safely there and back again. And if I show up armed and with all of you, then she won't even show.
Still, the more I thought about it, the more I didn't like it.
But maybe there's something we can do.
One minute. That's how long it took before my brain started screaming at me. The Skywagon lifted, and in 1 minute, I was certain I was going to die. Every thought was crushed away by that one impulse that grew and swelled within me. And while I knew that I wasn't going to be sucked into the clouds while being smashed into paint on the ground, all I could do was scramble for an orb and clutch at my horn as my heart beat faster and faster. I fought to try and make the connection, even if it was just to unconscious oblivion if the orb was trapped. I wanted to be with Maripony and Big Macintosh. I wanted to be with the Marauders. I wanted to be with Twist and Vanity and Jetstream and Stonewing and even Doof if I had to. I wanted to jump, insane as it was. I'd be happy taking a spin inside Deus, Blue Blood, or Gorgon, or even Sanguine. I was lying in a bed. A hospital bed, from the beeping machinery and the feeling of tubes going in and out of my body. Blissful lethargy filled me. I could barely move my head as the sensation of floating filled every limb. Everything felt so distant. I couldn't tell who or what I was inside right now, just that I was sprawled on my side on the bed. I had the feeling that there were a lot of ponies standing outside my field of vision, but I couldn't move to see them. Then a maroon unicorn buck in a white lab coat stepped into view. A pony is truly a thing of wonder. The arrangement of limbs, the paths of nerves, the circulation of our blood. Magic is in our very bodies and souls. It courses through us. It gave me the ability to alter the universe. Gave you flight.
His magic reached out to dab a cloth at my host's drooling lips.
Sadly, for all of our wonder, our flesh is limited, and our souls finite. But this war, this darling war, has offered an opportunity to expand and explore the very possibilities of life itself. And you are going to play a part in that. You should be honored, Lance Corporal Stonewing, he said as he adjusted his glasses. You see, not only are we going to mend your flesh, we are going to enhance it, empower it.
He patted his cheek softly.
We are going to make you better.
And with that, he moved out of my field of sight, his hooves echoing across a tiled floor. The murmuring increased. "I don't like this at all," a familiar mare's voice said with an edge of tension as she approached the bed I lay upon. "I want to speak to him." "The subject is under heavy sedation for the procedure, Fluttershy. He shouldn't be conscious. He shouldn't even be alive with his spine severed," another mare said as the pink-haired Pegasus stepped in front of my host and lowered her soft blue eyes to meet mine. Her lips curled slowly, and I felt his curl to match. "Don't worry, soldier. We're going to fix you right up. We're going to make sure that you never ever get hurt again." I felt a rasp in my throat that might have been a question. I didn't feel good. What little of my body I could sense felt like it was crawling inside. "We've got his consent in writing and recording," the mare with the familiar voice said softly. And then a bright red unicorn mare with a short white-trimmed mane stepped into my vision. She wore magenta glasses with glittery plastic frames, and a sure smile I didn't like at all. "Dr. Trueblood's got the other subject prepared for the mega spell." A glittery red hoof came to rest on Fluttershy's shoulders. "We really can't wait any longer. We're already committed." Fluttershy looked tense. Her eyes were surrounded by wrinkles. Stonewing made another noise of confusion. Something about this was all wrong, and we both knew it. The red mare continued softly. "They won't use your mega spell on the battlefield, Fluttershy. But we can still put it to use to keep Pony safe. That's what this is all about, after all. Keeping Pony safe. And he will be safe, and he'll be able to keep other ponies safe as well. He won't even have to kill zebras anymore. He'll stop them with one look, turn them back with another." Fluttershy looked at me a moment longer, her eyes full of both sadness and a terrible kind of need. A need for something. She wanted this, I realized, but she didn't want to admit it. Couldn't admit it. I think that my host realized it too as he breathed harder and faster, trying to say something, anything to stop this. But Fluttershy just backed away and let the nurses and doctors come and gently pull back his sheet and levitate him into the air. I saw jars full of a familiar and disgusting rainbow concoction dripping into a tube that disappeared into my limp hoof. Slowly, I was levitated over into the middle of a circle of unicorns. I wasn't alone. Something else floated there as well. Something I first thought was some kind of chicken. Then I noticed the wings, the claws, the serpentine body. But before my eyes it was changing, bubbling, melting as if it were made of wax. "Careful," the medical buck called out. "You don't want to liquefy him too much. Remember the last 4 subjects." And so was my host. I caught a glimpse of his hoof stretching like wax before my eyes. I wanted to cry out.
but all he could do was rasp as I felt his body return. They'd said they'd sedated him. They'd lied, or it wasn't nearly enough. And when sensation returned, I felt the violation of the creature being pressed into his body. Flesh twisted as I felt it struggle and thrash for freedom inside him. And it was slow. So horribly slow. The creature felt like it was swimming inside him, as if his flesh were a net it tried to escape from. And worse, I had the distinct feeling of something happening inside my skull. My eyes crawled as I felt the sockets change. Excellent. He's blended nicely, I heard the medical buck say sharply. Right. Purge the contaminants, and let's see what comes out of the oven. The glow dimmed, and I felt something horrid being expelled from my orifices. Good. Good. Superfluous biological material removed. Everything going exactly as it should. The buck stomped his hooves eagerly. Wonderful. The fusion megaspell is a success. I dropped to the floor in a pile of colorful ichor and fleshy goo and slowly turned my head towards the sound of the stomping. The maroon unicorn in the lab coat seemed quite enthused. Meanwhile, Garnet was escorting Fluttershy to the door. I rose to my shaky hooves, feeling a body that was no longer my own. I tried to talk around a serpentine tongue, tried to call out to Fluttershy. I imagined him begging her to turn him back. Then, with one parting glance over her shoulder, Fluttershy left the room with Miss Redhooves. A nurse stepped in front of him.
He seems aware, Dr. Trueblood,
she said as she stared into my host's eyes. Then she jerked and gasped, crying out in pain as her limbs solidified before me. Excellent. Magical traits of the edition transferred intact, the maroon pony in the lab coat said, actually dancing in glee. Then my host reared up and smashed the petrified pony into rubble. Screams started as he began to charge through the megaspell chamber. I noticed that he was trying to struggle to a doctor, his bat-like wings fighting for purchase. But then spells filled his body with lethargy. He collapsed as the numbness robbed his strength once more. A sack went over his head. Conjured ropes bound his limbs.
You said he'd maintain his sapience, Doctor,
the mare with the glittery hoofs shouted as she returned.
Fluttershy almost saw that.
The unicorn buck chuckled in delight. Oh, he did. I'm sure of it. He came right towards me, after all.
And you're sure?
Yes. Project Chimera is a complete success. We simply need more subjects to make the process more efficient. Explore combinations. Trace possibilities. The doctor chuckled from nearby. I think we should classify this strain as Gorgon. The glittery-hooved mare spoke from right above me.
I hope you're right, Doctor. We're trying to procure more combat personnel for prototypes. Luna wants war resources, and we're going to give them to her. Though we'll have to keep billing this as a Ministry of Peace project to keep the others distracted.
Oh. Cloak and dagger intrigues I leave to you, Garnet. Are you going to forward our results to Emerald?
Of course, Dr. Trueblood. The MAS should be briefed about the possibilities of flux-accelerated megaspells, and we're already exploring possibilities with the other ministries.
Are you sure that's wise? Shouldn't the Ministry of Peace maintain exclusivity? Garnet laughed brightly.
Oh, Doctor, then we wouldn't be able to get away with nearly as much.
I felt magic lift Stonewing's body as the red pony said softly.
Let's make sure his memory is nice and clean, and then we put him in storage till we're ready to duplicate the process.
I felt a horn touch his forehead through the bag, and everything swirled away, Coming to, I felt myself shaking as the memory left me. Gorgon. Project Chimera was Equestria's monster-making program. And Fluttershy had known. Had been involved. She had said to do better. That wasn't better. That was insane. I swallowed hard as I twitched there on the ground. After Deus's orb, and now Gorgon's, I wasn't sure I'd be able to go into any more orbs for a while. I felt sick at the thought of it. It was like sticking my hoof in the fire. So, where the heck was I now? I slowly opened my eyes and looked around. This was some kind of office, and a fancy one if you looked past the fallen ceiling tiles and rotting floor. Streamers of water trickled constantly from broken and cracked pipes overhead, and washed over the moldy carpeting and miniature rivers. The emergency lighting still flickered and twitched on and off. The big desk in the room looked just like an overmare's. And the open door leading from the office was a stable door. Or at least a flimsy half-sized replica of one. This couldn't be a stable, though. No stable had armored windows looking out at the wasteland as this office did. I walked to the door. It looked like a stable, if you'd built one with rooms twice as large as normal. No stable I'd seen had hallways this roomy. I watched the rusty river trickling along the hall and cascading down some stairs. Judging by the cracks and holes in the wall, clearly this place wasn't built as tough as a stable either. A ping sounded, and one of the replica stable doors down the hall slid open. Okay. Once again, have I mentioned how much I really wish I had my EFS? And my gun? And my barding? And my friends? I really hated being alone, especially in any place that looked remotely like a stable. Stables were not places for lone ponies. The door opened into an elevator. It was lined with posters. Stable Tech, Voyage to the Future, proclaimed one. Save yourself and your family. Sign up today, read another. Looking at the pictures of 10-story stables with swimming pools and internal gardens, I wondered why I'd never heard of a stable like that. 99 must have opted out of those features. And who knew? Maybe it had. How many stables had been built? Perhaps stables 1, 2, and 3 had been paradises, but towards the end they had to replace underground greenhouses with recycling equipment out of simple need for expediency. I stepped into the elevator. The door slid closed behind me, and the car started descending. As long as I kept my eyes on the walls, I didn't feel the panic building. Too much. 10 seconds later, the elevator slowed and the car doors opened. I stepped into a hall almost completely sealed with rubble. One door remained clear. Written on it in chipped white paint were the words, Stable Tech R&D. The few other doors I could see were open and led to rooms that looked so damaged that they might collapse on me if I so much as sneezed in the general area. I really hoped that I wouldn't have to try them. The door slid open in front of me, and I stepped onto a catwalk over a floor covered in work tables. I picked my way slowly around the edge of the stairs down to the work floor. An entire wall was almost covered with glowing monitor screens. Looking up at the upper left, I saw a flickering label over a slowly rotating design. Stable 1, completed. Next to it was an even larger design. Stable 2, completed. And the next, and the next. Some of the monitors were dead. A few were marked as delayed or redesigned, but the majority of them were complete. I saw the sprawling layout of Stable 89 with all its many storage areas and labs. It looked similar to 90 and 91. Then I frowned as I looked at Stable 90. Complete? This stable is not finished, Buttercup had written. A mistake? Or had something else happened? Despite everything, I smiled at the sight of 99. I'd never realized how big 99 actually was. The 4 stories of habitation blocks around a central stair linking atrium to living quarters to utility storage to maintenance to reactor. It looked a bit like a tree, curiously enough. And it was complete, if completely fucked up. Over the workstations were more stable designs, flickering and rotating silently on their screens. Rapture Hydrostable resembled dozens of bubbles. Was it supposed to go underwater? Sea Star Hydrostable looked more like some sort of floating island. Celestial 1 Astrostable had rotating wheels like a wagon and long sweeping wings, while Luna 1 Astrostable didn't appear much different from the Big Stable 2. Big Macintosh Megastable was positively huge, looking as if it had been designed to hold thousands instead of hundreds. Scootaloo Aerostable seemed more designed for cloud dwellers, while the Pinkie Pie Aerostable hung from huge balloons. There were other designs that seemed even less concrete. Along the opposite wall were monitors showing the evolution of the terminals and pitbucks. The first were room-sized monsters, then desk-sized, like many mainframes we'd run across. Then the Personal Information Processor, Alpha, appeared in the form of a pitbuck so large it covered an entire pony. The next terminals were small enough to fit on a desk. Beta pitbucks covered most of a limb and still had a backpack. After that, the terminals became more simplified and refined. I couldn't see a difference between the standard, hardened, and reinforced terminals. The difference in pitbucks was far more obvious. The Gamma models were what I had on my hoof, from the slightly bulkier 2000 to the more compact 3000. There was a Delta model, too, that seemed even simpler and more flimsy than the rest. Terminals shrank to hoof-sized contact nodes. I wondered if eventually the two would merge. Well, would have merged, if things hadn't blown up, that is. There weren't any exits on the first floor, so I climbed back up to the catwalk. Most of the offices off the catwalk were locked and dark, but one was lit by the green glow of a terminal. I made my way to that door. The office within was cluttered in an absent-minded way. There were wadded-up designs piled high in the wastebasket, drawings taped to every available surface, and scale models dangling from the ceiling on fishing line. A full-sized robotic pony stood silently in one corner, looking forlorn and abandoned. There were pictures of things other than technology, too. 3 fillies wearing blue and gold capes, piled one on top of the other, laughing at the camera. The trio, a bit older, proudly displaying their cutie marks. I was struck by how similar they looked. The 3 again, this time mature mares apparently enjoying a night out together. There were pictures of Applejack, and one of Big Macintosh, and a third of an elderly green pony. The terminal had only one thing on its screen: Area of Inquiry. I looked at the terminal and its keys, then typed slowly, EC1101. The screen flickered once. Hello, Blackjack. I was looking at the blinking cursor when a flicker and flash from behind me caused me to spin around, reflexively trying to ready a weapon that wasn't there. The light was coming from the robot, and as I watched, it grew more and more concrete until a flickery image of a young Applebloom stood in front of me, identical to the filly in the picture save for the luminescence that glowed around her. Looking at the strange glowy earth pony, I relaxed a bit, though not much.
Hello?
Heard you got yourself a puzzle on your hoof, the filly said as she trotted towards me. Something must be broken because that sounded nothing like a filly. Well, I never got a puzzle-solving cutie mark, but most folk figured I was a clever pony.
If you don't mind, what the heck are you?
I asked in shock.
Who are you?
She gave a smile. Well, that's the million-bit question, ain't it? Maybe I'm a pony running things from a terminal somewhere, helping you out. Maybe I'm just a machine doing what I'm programmed to. Or maybe I'm Applebloom. You can call me Applebot. Then she looked at my blackened pip-buck. Her eyes widened in shock. Land sakes! How'd you fry a 3000? They're supposed to last forever.
Lightning?
Lightning. The robot sounded skeptical. You got it struck by lightning. I nodded weakly. She rubbed her mouth as she looked at the blackened electronics, then shrugged. Well, that'll do it. I guess you'll be needing a new one.
So, the data's not lost?
I asked warily as two mechanical hands, if you could call the clusters of tools that, rose from the robot's shoulders. The tools on the end of each finger began to deftly remove my pip-buck. The little pony smirked. Oh, would it take more than that to kill your data? To do that, something would have to destroy your pip-buck outright. And probably you too. Nah, you just fried the interface, which I gotta admit is still pretty impressive. She set the device on the table, then trotted over to the metal cabinet. Now, 3,000. Nope, fresh out of 3,000. Looks like you're gonna have to make do with a Delta model.
A Delta?
I asked as I watched her remove a sleek, polished silver pip-buck. I looked at it, and then at my more bulky model.
Do you have anything a little bit, heavier?
The little Applebloom cocked her brow at me.
Well, you see, it's just that I hit ponies with my pip-buck.
You hit 'em? She clicked her tongue, and then said with a touch of playful sarcasm, That ain't no way to treat sensitive electronics. She replaced the flimsy silver one and dug around a bit. Aha! Here we go. She pulled out a matte black pip-buck that seemed marginally more bulky. But only barely. Was designing this one for the shadow bolts, but it never made it to mass production. Setting it next to my old 3000, the robotic hands removed the covering as I watched. So, how's Stable 99 holding up? Applebot asked curiously. Huh? I blinked. Stable 99. I put a whole lot of new stuff in there. Was wondering if it worked out or not.
Well, it's still working. I mean, I hear Rivets complain all the time about leaking pipes, but the recyclers still work like a charm.
Well, that's good to hear. I was a little worried about the reprocessors. I mean, I know they purify and remix the waste. I ate the sample chips myself. Still, there's just something off about that.
Yeah, especially when you have to reprocess a buck after being removed from the breeding population.
The robot froze as she finished removing the casing. She looked back at me. What did you say? You do what now?
Put dead ponies in the reprocessors?
I blinked at her shocked and disgusted expression.
What? That's what we're supposed to do, right?
Maybe if you like a high-protein diet, she said, still looking a little shaken. Reprocessors weren't made for that, though. That's why I installed an incinerator. She gave a disgusted little shiver. And breeding what now?
Well, in Stable 99...
And I explained the whole breeding process as the little Applebloom's mechanical armatures carefully removed a flat, glowing gem plate. It looked like a wafer of pure diamond with a magical glyph in the center. She placed it in the new pip-buck and deftly screwed it into place. You what? Was Applebot's response to my explanation.
Well, that's what we're supposed to do. I mean, didn't Stable-Tech set it up that way?
I said defensively. The robot shook her head slowly, the magical hologram flickering slightly as it turned back to the pit-bucks. Then there was a hiss and a click, and a mare's voice sounded from my new pit-buck.
Hi, this is Scootaloo. And you know what? I'm sick of these recordings. I am just fucking sick of them. I don't... Fuck.
The mare sighed.
How'd things get so messed up I had to do over 100 of these? Damn it, I'm just so sick of it all.
There was a teary sniff.
Oh, to hell with it. Okay, again, this is Scootaloo, VP of Stable-Tech. You've got yourself one heck of a stable. We made it as good as we could. You've probably noticed you don't have any orchards or food warehouses, right? Well, that's because the machines of 99 recycle all your waste, purify it, mix it. You know what? Don't think about it, okay? Just don't. It's gross no matter how you slice it. It just means you won't run out of food anytime soon. So long, she continued sharply, as you keep the population stable. You should have enough contraceptives to last at least 2 centuries. You also need to keep a 1 offspring per pony policy. Keep things stable, Overmare. There's other stuff here too, but you know what? I don't care anymore. I don't care. Do what you have to do, but keep things stable. Survive. And do better than we did. Applebloom, you two are doing the next ones, got it? I need a fucking drink. 99. Fuck. 99.
The voice cut off. Those are all the instructions given, Applebot said. There were some additional plans, but the fact is that by 99 we left it largely up to the ponies to decide what they do. I mean, the only restriction 101 had was that it was Earth ponies only. Who knows what they cooked up? She gave a soft sigh. Poor Scootaloo. It wasn't fair to her, but she was the only one who could record those messages. I got tongue-tied and Sweetie Belle just bawled.
But how'd we go from that to...
I just stared at the enormity of it. It hadn't been some messed up Stable-Tech rule or bylaw. It was us. We'd created the nightmare P-21 and I'd escaped from. I swallowed hard and looked at the hologram-wrapped robot.
Are you really Applebloom?
Maybe. Or maybe I'm just a copy of her, she said as she finished and powered up the black pit-buck. Hard to say, really. But there's some truth to saying that you shouldn't use yourself as a test subject. Just ain't healthy, she said as the robot's hand slipped the device around my hoof. There you go, complete with a fully functional broadcaster and terminal interface. At my blank look, she rolled her eyes and then explained. Basically, lets you contact terminals through your pit-buck, if you have a signal source recorded. She then looked down at my pit-buck. So, EC1101. Still exists, huh? I felt a shiver go down my spine.
EC1101. What the hell is it?
Applebot smiled sadly up at me. The keys to the magical kingdom of Equestria, Blackjack. Once upon a time, Equestria had been ruled by 2 princesses. The older because, quite honestly, she was immortal and magical. There wasn't a civil war or a crisis of succession, because the princesses couldn't die of old age. Celestia had 1,000 years of experience, and the kingdom was familiar with her leadership. She wasn't a tyrant. She didn't have to be a tyrant. The status quo was so comfortable and predictable that Equestria simply accepted her rule. Beneath her was a hierarchy of lesser nobles tasked with administrating the smaller day-to-day local concerns and maintaining the order of things. Equestria had 1,000 years of near-social stasis. Of course, the return of Nightmare Moon and Princess Luna disturbed all that. It wasn't big at first, but the presence of two princesses prompted a change in attitude across the kingdom. There were many reasons for Celestia to continue, but what if other possibilities were considered? New avenues of thought opened up simply because the societal fabric had altered its paradigm. Magic became arcane science. Nobles found their stations questioned and challenged. Businesses arose. Trade with outsiders, both of goods and ideas, exploded. Life was new and good. But then war came. A war such as Equestria could not have known. And like so many things, ponies were not prepared for its novelty. The violence tore at Equestria, and fear and desperation ripped at its underpinnings. Some stresses pushed science and magic further than ever dreamed. Others tore ponies down. But through it all went the ironclad belief that, whether under Celestia or Luna, a princess would rule. Shattered Hoof Ridge changed all that. Only Big Macintosh's sacrifice prevented Equestria from discovering the hard way just how integral the princesses were to the country's collective psyche. The death of a soldier was tragic. But the idea of losing one of the fundamental parts of the kingdom proved unbearable. It introduced an insidious question. What would Equestria do if the princesses were killed? EC1101. Equestrian Command 1101 isn't a computer file, Applebot explained softly as her mechanical hands withdrew into her shoulders. It's a delayed trigger megaspell designed to transfer control of the country's crucial systems from the princesses to another individual in the event of both of the princesses' deaths. It was supposed to use the terminal network. It would travel from terminal to terminal, node to node, seeking out the next designated target.
So, who were the targets?
I asked, just before the realization hit me.
The Ministry Mares. Of course.
Yes. First Twilight Sparkle, then Applejack, Rainbow Dash, Fluttershy, Rarity, and finally Pinkie Pie. The spell would locate them all and bestow upon them the authority to run the country and give them full control over the countless information, magic, and technological systems that ran Equestria. If it failed to do that, it would seek out the heads of the armed services, the courts, the Office of Interministry Affairs, or the descendants of any of its targets. Unfortunately, it seems the spell could not make contact with any pony.
So how did it end up in Stable 99?
Sheer size, unfortunately, and the fact that it wasn't triggered till the fall of Canterlot, which took far longer to die than the rest of Equestria. Most nodes handle small packets of magical information. EC1101 was not small. It was a highly complex behemoth of a spell, and unlike normal files, it had only a few networks it could move through swiftly. The Balefire bombs shattered those networks. The last jump it made, I suspect, was from the Ministry Morale's hub in Manhattan, just prior to or during the city's destruction. Then the stable tech link between Stable 99 and the rest of Equestria was severed, and the spell remained trapped in Stable 99 systems.
So, why is Sanguine after it now? The Ministry Mares are all dead. Every pony's dead.
Gee, what a rosy thought that was, Blackjack. Correct. None of the Ministry Mares had offspring, and the likelihood of locating the descendants of the military or judicial branches is admittedly minuscule. The spell might recognize a ghoul, but I am skeptical. Still, it is a key, and I think some pony with the right skills might be able to use it to force an override of something, maybe turn off a security system or break into a database. The fit would be rough, though, and it would probably only work 2 or 3 times before the spell got completely wrecked. An idea struck me.
Have you ever heard of anything called Project Chimera?
She looked thoughtful, rolling her eyes as she stared at the ceiling. There. Found an index. She nodded once. Project Chimera. OIA. Project sealed by Royal Command. Her flickering eyes widened. Holy smokes. Sealed by Royal Command.
What's that mean?
It means that Luna, personally, put her hoof down and killed that project. A lot of the ponies involved probably went to jail, too.
Could EC1101, well, open it up again?
My mane crept on my neck as the little robot blinked, thought, and then nodded. Probably. If a princess locked it, some pony with a princess's access privileges would have to unlock it.
How about Project Eternity?
Project Eternity. OIA. Project sealed under Royal Command.
Project Redoubt.
Project Redoubt. OIA project. Sealed by Royal Command. Then she blinked in shock. Well now, looks like Luna was cleaning the house of the OIA. I wonder why.
Yeah, me too.
I frowned and rubbed my nose with my hoof.
Are there any other OIA projects that were shut down by Royal Command?
I don't... Wait. I've got... Project Steel Pony, Project Party Pooper, Project Starfall, Project Horizons. Applebot paused. Then the flickering robo-pony frowned in consideration. You want something else that's weird? They were all shut down on the same day, a month before the bombs fell. I heard the soft rustle of cards as I thought about those names.
OIA. Office of Interministry Affairs, right? Who are they?
Oh, them? Not much. They acted as liaisons between stable tech and ministries other than the MWT, she said with a dismissive little shrug. A bunch of overworked ponies who were really busy managing the gaps between the ministries.
What do you mean by gaps between the ministries?
I asked with a little frown. Because that's what the OIA did. Say there was some pony in the MAS that had an idea they wanted to work out with the MOP. The OIA would pass that idea to someone in the MOP. They'd set things up for the two ministries to work them out. Make bridges between the ministries and fill the gaps. Or, say some inventor came up with a new talisman, but both the MWT and MAS wanted dibs on it. The OIA would work things out so that every pony had access without wasting time fighting and arguing. Some ponies like to call it Spike's ministry, but I'm not sure if he was involved. I sighed, feeling the nasty thought.
Why would they make monsters then?
That seemed to surprise her, and I explained Gorgon's memory orb. That is very disturbing. But while I've no doubt the OIA might have set up something like that, it was probably originated in the Ministry of Peace. While most were diligent about helping Equestria, and even the enemy, there were some ponies there that were decidedly creepy. I sighed, looking at the pip-buck with a little grunt.
Well, damn. As interesting as all this was, I have to admit, now that I know what it is, I still don't know what to do with it.
I tapped the screen showing the file name with a hoof.
I mean, it doesn't tell me who Sanguine was working for or how to stop him.
I frowned at her.
Would he be able to use EC1101 to make more monster ponies?
If that's what Chimera was for, I suppose so, Applebot said thoughtfully.
So much for just giving the damn thing up. Could I just destroy it?
That made her pause. I suppose so. Sure, not even your Pip-Buck spell matrix will survive something like a Balefire blast, Applebot replied, and I felt staggered. That's what it would take? But are you sure you want to? You don't know what those other projects are who you might be able to help. Great. Guilt trip me with that.
I just wish I could find some offspring of Applejack or Pinkie Pie and shove it in their lap.
And then what? I started fiddling with the new pip buck, checking some of its features. Huh. The EFS was blue instead of amber. That was at least 20% cooler. Yeah, unless you're some kind of long-lost descendant of Twilight Sparkle, it's not much good to you, she said, looking sympathetic. If you want my advice, EC1101 was en route somewhere when it got stuck in Stable 99. If you can get it to where it was going, you might find some answers about what's going on and who's really after it.
So how do I do that?
Oh, that's easy. Go back to whatever terminal you got EC1101 from, and see which terminal it was going to next. Go to that terminal, and repeat the process till routing is finished.
Go back?
I muttered weakly, my eyes widening. My mane was suddenly feeling very scratchy indeed. Back to Stable 99. I had to go back. I wasn't exactly sure about Applebot's suggestion of following the route, but it was all I had at the moment. Above all that, though, was the fact that Stable 99 was a chapter I needed to close. I knew now that what they were doing was wrong, and I had the guns and friends to make sure it stopped for good.
Well, it's a plan at least,
I said, smiling. Good. I think that whatever you do, you should track that. And then there was a ping, and a crackle as the illusion wrapping around Applebot flickered, and the small robot slowly keeled over. With a clatter, it sparked, and the illusion disappeared. Then automatic fire ripped through the windows of Applebloom's office, and I fell onto my side. The robot gave a buzz, and the light in its eyes went out.
Gonna try to take me alive?
I shouted as broken glass settled over me. A rock flew through the shattered windows and bounced off the top of my head, making me curl up as it landed in front of me. An apple-shaped rock, with a bright red band around the middle. Reflexively, I threw it back through the window as I dove for cover under Applebloom's desk. The grenade erupted in a sheet of flame that splashed over the desk and the ponies immediately outside. I grabbed Applebloom's terminal and yanked it hard, snapping its cords. Floating the terminal in front of me, I raced out of the burning office and onto the catwalks. One Earth pony was scrambling, trying to extinguish her armor and bring her automatic pistol to bear on me at the same time. Another started taking shots that sparked and pinged off the terminal housing. I looked down and toggled sats with a thought. In that moment of accelerated time, my horn flashed thrice, and her head transformed to gray, red, and white pulp. Sweet goddesses, how I loved sats! Now I had a gun and a terminal. I lifted the former and heaved the latter at the mare with a similar 10mm automatic. She dodged away as I raised the pistol, took aim, and carefully planted a quartet of bullets in her face and throat. There was still a lot more red bars on my cool blue EFS, though, as I swept up her gun.
Ares! She's up here!
Shouted a Colt from the far side of the lab. The catwalk was clear, and I raced for the door. Suddenly, a plume of flame sprayed up through the grate and swept towards me. Burning office behind me, and plume of flame to the front. The only way to go was down. I leapt over the catwalk railing. My tail, a little too late to avoid the spray of flame, trailed smoke. I landed, my legs giving a resounding pop as something gave way. I rolled and slid across the grimy floor, ending up underneath a work table. I heard the ping of a grenade bouncing off the top before rattling further away, and then detonating with a fiery whoomph. Something walked with ominously slow and heavy steps. The rest were moving fast. One slid across the floor with a victorious look in her eyes. Our gazes met, and her jaws worked the trigger. My horn was faster, and with a pop ejected the clip. Unfortunately, that didn't stop the 10mm round still in the chamber from thumping meatily into my front leg, but nothing she could do prevented me from filling her with a half-dozen rounds from both guns. Struggling to my feet, I snatched up her clip in my teeth and kept my head low as I limped as fast as I could, hoping that the smoke filling the room would screen my movements. A wall of flames sprayed across my path, cutting off the stair back to the catwalk. I backpedaled from the heat so quickly that I fell over. I looked at the source of the flame. The Steel Ranger power armor had been spray painted a brilliant cherry red with a fireball on the flank. A heavy incinerator was mounted on one side of the armor, and a grenade launcher protruded from the other. Shit! I was dealing with a flaming deus. And worse, I doubted these bullets were going to cut it. I hobbled my way forward as two other ponies ran around to cut me off and finish me. I screamed around the clip in my jaws as I strafed the pair. Then I body slammed into one, collapsing into a tangle of limbs. The other mare was so eager to finish me off that she sprayed bullets into her teammate. I hauled the corpse over my body as a meat shield, hissing in pain as two more holes opened in me. My head started to spin. Be strong, a little orange pony told me. I ejected the spent clip and slammed the one in my mouth home, narrowing my eyes as I clutched the body over me like a macabre blanket. She had no such cover, and my bullets raked across her until she finally fell. I swallowed, fighting the urge to vomit. I could hear Ares walking closer, and saw the remaining 2 red bars. Still, I needed healing desperately. Digging through their bodies, I found 2 cloudy gray potions and grimaced. They tasted like sour milk, and they didn't do much for my injuries. The Med-X helped far more, though, allowing me to haul myself to my hooves.
She's getting up! Moving to your left!
The Colt called out, and I reversed as grenades clattered in that direction, filling the air with more patches of crackling magenta fire. There was a hiss, and from a few feebly glowing talismans sprayed cones of water. I doubted it would be enough to fight the kind of blaze that Ares was creating, but it washed out some of the smoke and made it easier for me to think. That Colt was tracking me somehow. Not with an EFS. I was pretty sure the power armor had something like that. This was something giving him the distance he needed. I ran. Limped horribly with my leg threatening to make me fall flat on my face with one wrong step, in the direction of the door again. As I approached the stairs and the catwalk, I saw the blue unicorn Colt with the picture cutie mark from Chapel looking down and a strange little device between his hooves. Then he calmly lifted a revolver and started blasting away at me. Falling on my face in the slippery pool of cold water was the only way I could keep from eating more rounds of lead. I rolled over and pointed the pistol at his face, but he just smirked with certainty and fired again. Damn it! Sure, he was a Colt, but he was shooting at me. Why couldn't I blow him away for that? I scrambled through the water as his bullet took off the tip of my ear. The Med-X wasn't enough to fully keep the edge off the pain as I staggered ahead of Ares and out of the blue Colt's field of fire. I just needed a healing potion. And to stop the bleeding. And for the world to stop spinning. I limped along in a circuit. Ares had swapped to fragmentation grenades now, lobbing them with infuriating accuracy. My tail was both ragged and scorched now, and my butt was laced with superficial holes from chunks of shrapnel. The second I slowed down just a little, I was toast. I wondered if they were toying with me for Gemini and Taurus. Wait. My tail. I took cover behind an overturned workbench and ran my hooves and magic through my singed tail. Then I felt it. A small ball the size of a corn puff, and almost as light, was clipped to my tail. It had a small blinking light. A tracking device? Good. I was so glad I wasn't going to have to yell at Ditzy or Bottlecap. Still, what good did it do me against that power armor? Eventually I'd bleed out or burn up, even if I crushed the thing. What I needed was some way to disable Ares, like with one of P-21's spark grenades. Some way. I looked at the rows and rows of stable monitors, and the cables hanging behind them. Left! 40 feet! Now! The Colt yelled as Ares turned and fired another shot with a grenade launcher. To the right, I scrambled on top of the closest workbench and prayed. The grenade exploded, the monitors flickering wildly as the power cables were severed and the wires dropped into the churning water. There was a resounding pop and a smell of ozone. The power armor's weapons drooped as the crackle went on. And then everything went dark. Slowly, I walked towards the stairs and looked up at the Colt. Now his smile wasn't nearly so cocky.
Ares? Ares? She's coming!
In my mutant gaze, I could see him clearly as I walked through the darkness towards him and tossed the gun aside. He gave a desperate giggle and hiccup as he levitated his revolver and pointed it at me. My horn shoved the barrel aside as he fired. He re-aimed, and again I shoved the barrel in the other direction. The bullet passed so close beside me I could feel it. I stared him right in the eyes as he pressed the hot tip of the gun to my forehead.
You won't kill me. I'm a kid. I'm just a colt. You won't. Please don't.
As he scrambled back, I saw his strange cutie mark was peeling away. A cutie mark decal. His flank was blank beneath it. He pulled the trigger, but there was no recoil as my magic gripped the hammer before it could release and fire the round. Now he shook in terror as his levitated weapon jerked ineffectually.
You're right. You are just a colt,
I said low and soft, my grin spreading.
And I'm not an executioner.
Then I grabbed him in my bloody hooves and twisted, sitting atop the stairs and pulling him across my lap as my magic flung the weapon from his startled grasp. He wailed as I pinned his head with one hoof and then spanked his ass as hard as I could, grunting with each smack.
Do not shoot the nice security pony!
Then I shoved him away from me and limped towards the elevator, leaving him sniffling behind me. From the depths of the power armor came a mare's tentative,
hello?
As I limped to the door. I made my way back up to the office I'd awoken in and found my way to the roof. Ditzy-Doo waited nervously with Silverbell as each of my friends, who technically hadn't come with me to the meeting, each stood watch at a different corner of the building. Well, 3 were watching. Rampage spat loogies over the edge. As the doors slammed shut behind me, Rampage looked up and noted the new holes in me. Her face split into a grin.
So, run into any trouble?
My smoldering look gave them their answer. Really, it was my own damn fault. I'd said, wait on the roof and keep an eye out for trouble, not stay 10 feet behind me and keep quiet. The Zodiacs had gotten in some other way, and my friends had been up here the whole time. I flopped onto my side and dug out an orb, and got ready for the flight back. Jetstream. The memories that flowed from the orb weren't the same I was used to. Somehow they were concentrated and accelerated, coming in flashes and little insights. Jetstream meeting Stonewing in summer flight camp. The pair learning to fly together, she with ease and he with difficulty. There is a race between them and some rivals, but a thunderstorm brews. A gust of wind blows all of them into the mountainside, with the exception of Jetstream. She flies faster than ever before. Stonewing, slowest flyer in all of Equestria, proves himself also the strongest as he carries 3 Pegasi across the finish line on his back. She's gotten her windy cutie mark. He's gotten his granite wings. The pair, older, seeing the Wonderbolts perform for the summer sun celebration. A cyan Pegasus with a rainbow mane talks about wanting to join the team. He can't take his eyes off of her. Jetstream can't take her eyes off of him. They're sitting together in his home in a city of clouds, reading about the rescue attempt and the deaths of so many Wonderbolts together. He wonders about the mare. She just sighs and looks away. They meet behind the weather factories. He tells her he's going to enlist. She tries to talk him out of it. They show up in basic training together. Stonewing lifts Big Macintosh on his back. He gets applause for the first time in his life. She smiles, so happy for him. They fly in their first battle together. Griffin Mercs can't resist the slower flyer, but their rifles can't drop him. She picks them off one by one with lightning passes. After the battle, she receives commendations from their captain, Cupcake. She tries to give credit to Stonewing. He just shakes his head with a smile and limps away to the medics. Dinner on a boardwalk with the Marauders. Doof challenges Stonewing to a garlic eating contest. They eat bulb after bulb. Doof goes red, then green. Then he loses. Stonewing eats 3 more bulbs. Jetstream gives him a victory kiss anyway. They watch the fireworks over the bay, her head resting on his firm shoulder. Another mission. She's hit and spirals down. Zebra warriors swarm in. Stonewing lands among them like an avalanche. A bayonet catches him in the throat, ripping it open. His wonderful bass voice goes silent forever. He doesn't fall, standing over her till the rest of the Marauders extract them. A dinner alone on a mountaintop. She's going to do it. She's ready. She's going to tell him. She's going to let him. But there's an explosion in the village below, and he's away, flying to help. She watches, realizing how alone she'd been before flying after him. The bombing at Prance. She tries to get him alone. She tries to tell him how she feels. He listens. He smiles. He shakes his head and kisses her forehead. He breaks her heart as gently as possible. She's grateful for the bomb. An argument. She wants to leave. He wants to re-enlist. She can't see the reason. He just shakes his head. She's had enough fighting. He's not done yet. She signs the papers to stay another year. They watch the rocket rise on a pillar of fire. Stonewing grins like an eager colt. She smiles and can't help herself. She rests her head on his shoulder again, hoping he can't feel her tears. Brimstones fall. She sees the sniper. She starts to open her mouth. The bullet strikes him in the neck, and he falls like a brick wrapped in a dirty sheet. She flies to save him, to repay him. But the medics load him onto an evacuation wagon with a tag around his hoof. An argument. Big Macintosh tells her to be strong. Tells her that it's all right. Tells her the war can't last forever. Tells her to remember Stonewing and all they'd done together. She cries out and strikes him. She hits him again and again as the rest of the squad looks on. She sits alone on a cloud. Vanity teleports to her. She tells him what she needs. He tells her it's a mistake. She asks once more. He kisses her cheek softly, tells her he understands. Her eyes widen as he touches his horn to her brow and takes the tears away. I woke on the floor of the wagon, my gut and inner ears telling me that we were still flying. Fortunately, my brain had been through enough of that, and instead of screaming incoherently, I just lay there and groaned. Try to relax, Blackjack. We're almost back to chapel, P-21 said quietly as he stroked my striped mane. Guess we weren't much help after all.
Oh, it was my plan, not your fault,
I replied with a groan.
What's wrong with her?
The young filly asked as she looked down at me.
Just not good with wide open places.
I groaned softly.
Too many memories. Too many. Pinkie Pie, Stonewing, Jetstream.
The little filly suddenly looked curious.
A memory of Pinkie Pie? What was it about? Some pony tried to bomb a party she was at.
Talking helped a little. Took my mind off of falling. The filly looked at the spew in disgust.
I'm not cleaning that up. Don't worry about it, Silverbell,
Rampage said as she tossed a dirty rag over the puddle. I tried to go back into Jetstream's rapid-fire memories, but it was useless now. My horn refused to make the connection. Then I looked over at Rampage and saw she'd removed her steel barding once more. Lacuna had to carry it so the cart wouldn't be overloaded. The striped pony had no problem looking out, but I suppose that was because if she fell, she'd... Ugh. My eyes drifted further down to her flank. And then I froze. A cutie mark was a pony's most innate self, an ultimate expression of who and what we were. That had been as far as I'd gotten in the lecture before passing out from boredom, but I had the gist of it. Cutie marks mattered. So, what was the meaning of a cutie mark of a teddy bear having its rotting guts torn out by barbs of rusting metal sprouting from candy, while the bear itself ripped at a distorted zebra glyph of a skull while fleshy tendrils pulled and shredded at the normally smooth lines, and black lightning struck and shattered wine glasses while the background swirled in a spiral like a whirlpool? Yes, it actually moved. As I watched, the barbs of rust melted into chains while the teddy bear pulled its guts back in and screaming pony faces bubbled to the surface. Our eyes met, red on pink, and she gave me a little smile and shrug.
Ha! Beat that for a cutie mark. Mine moves.
I didn't want to beat that. I'd rather die than beat that.
You win,
I replied softly. I shut up for the rest of the flight. I wasn't going to say a single word of complaint right now. There were things worse than flying. Rose's funeral was something of an aberration. Few ponies actually left bodies to be buried when they came to chapel. Sentry beams turned all pilgrims into ash. Still, she'd left Thorn behind, and I'd asked Priest if he would allow it. I hadn't expected any pony else to be here, but to my surprise, the entire town attended. The Crusaders marched out en masse to support Thorn, and I suspected that for them, this was a service for their lost parents as well. The hoofful of adults remained in the back. Lacuna looked right at home in her black lace. After my fight in the Stable-Tech R&D building, I limped as badly as P-21 as we walked out to the field. Rampage was not in attendance. I could have asked his permission. She might have come. Of course, this was the moment the clouds started to threaten rain. Well, my cold couldn't get much worse, could it? Priest stepped next to the sheet wrapping Rose's body, bowing his head respectfully for a moment before speaking in his soft, clear voice. We all have a journey in our lives. A path to walk. A road to take. Each of us walks that road in our own way and at our own pace. Sometimes alone, if we must. Sometimes with others, if we're lucky. The fillies and colts around Thorn nudged her gently, reminding her that she wasn't alone. She was a crusader now. The road may be dark. It may be hard and painful. And all too frequently, it is cut short by another. We walk these roads as we are able, whether with vigor and excitement or a heavy load. But we all walk. Rose's road has come to an end, like so many do in the hoof. It was not a noble road, but while there was the blood of others upon it, there was also virtue. A love for a daughter, and a wish to keep her protected and safe. So if some would speak ill of the dead, let them do so when the past are not present.
I'll bring cake to your funeral.
You mean I get one? Sweet.
How many lives had I ended that had never gotten this opportunity? Had Air Duct and Vent received one? Where was the funeral for Scoodle? For those 40 nameless foals? For Tumbleweed and the 11 zebras? Where were the kind words for U-21? For Vanity? For Gorgon? For Deus? I did not want to die alone and forgotten.
Your road is at an end, Roses. Rest in the embrace of Celestia and Luna. Let the goddesses receive you with their peace and mercy. We bowed our heads, and then 6 unicorns, myself included, reached out our magic as one and lowered her down into the earth. The assembled ponies shuffled by. Medley dropped in a poem or a note. Priest set a drawing of Thorn upon the stained linen. Charity laid 2 bottle caps beside her. Glory a feather. Me? 2 of the little golden flowers. The young earth ponies took whatever spades they had and started to fill in the dirt. Harpika lay beside Thorn, holding her close under her dried and desiccated wing with an air of having done this many times for a foal. Ditsy-Doo's leg held Silverbell closely, the overcooked ghoul nuzzling the jagged scar on the filly's brow. As the dirt piled up, Thorn began to sob, crying for her mother, then crying for Rampage. I felt myself start to shake. I was already crying, but I had to hold it together. There was one last part. Glory had suggested it. P21 had agreed. How could I not? Slowly, I lifted the contrabass from its case and stood on my hind legs. You hold it like an earth pony, she had said. I rubbed my cheek on the cool wood and whispered softly, "Please, please don't let me mess it up." Priest's sheep music floated before me. I levitated the bow to my hoof, pinched it behind my fetlock, and dragged it slowly across the strings. As the contrabass's slow, sad notes rose over the sound of spades, it was joined by a violin. I looked at Charity in amazement, the filly giving me a grudging little nod as music rose from her glowing horn. I still didn't like her, but for this, there were more important things than what I liked or disliked. Priest calmly added the notes of a deeper stringed instrument. I don't know what adagio for strings meant, but as the music rose and fell, rising and falling, I could only feel my own disgusting and diseased heart trying to lift with it. And it hurt. Oh, how it hurt. It didn't matter if I cried. The rain was falling now. Higher. Higher. Just a little further, the instrument seemed to say. Higher. Silence. I hung my head as we played the last few chords, my heart starting to beat once more in my chest. I don't know what magic let me get through all that, but when the last note died, we were left with only the hissing rain, a muddy pile of dirt, and a piece of wood marked simply, Roses. Most ponies, being smarter than me, knew to get out of the rain. and this time I was at least clever enough to follow them. In the post office was a mournful celebration, as the Crusaders talked about fallen friends and lost family. There were tears, but there were just as many smiles. This was a funeral for far more than roses. It was a funeral for Scoodle, and for every pony who had died, yet was remembered. It was for that nameless Dashite, for those infected farmers, for Haas and Granny Smith and Macintosh and Maripony and all of the fallen marauders. I limped over to the lace-veiled Lacunae.
So, goddess. The goddess isn't here right now,
Lacunae replied in a low tone of near scorn. I was astonished I could hear it over the din.
She could not bear to be here right now. She is ignoring me and distracting herself with inconsequential thoughts of others.
Looking at the alicorn, I frowned, not sure if I was upset at her or the goddess.
I thought goddesses were supposed to care. They are. They are not supposed to die either, but they do. Excuse me,
she said as she rose and walked into the bathroom. There was a purple flash under the door, and when I peeked in, she was gone. Stepping out, I saw P21 and Glory standing apart. The pair didn't seem to associate with the Crusaders as well as I did. I looked at Charity, and she looked back at me. The truce could last just a little while longer.
Lacunae's gone somewhere.
P21 frowned at me and shook his head. I don't trust it. We don't know what it can do. Glory scowled at him, probably for his choice in pronouns.
Well, you can add disappearing to the list, and wings, and unicorn magic. Telepathy,
Glory added absently. At my uncomprehending stare, she rolled her eyes.
She talks inside of our heads, Blackjack. Ever notice how you can hear her no matter how noisy it is?
Yes. Yes, but it hadn't occurred to me that that was because her words could skip straight past my ears and into my brain. But that was definitely good to know. So she could talk in my head, though that did make me wonder what else she could do. I drifted through the crowd a bit more, then bumped into Harpica. The dusty ghoul looked at me in worry.
Oh, Blackjack, have you seen Thorn anywhere? I brought her inside, but she's disappeared, and the rain is getting worse. Oh, the master will be so upset if I lose track of one,
she fretted, forgetting that her master was the one who had killed Thorn's mother. I sighed.
I'll see if I can find her,
I said softly, fearing that I'd have to tear her from her mother's muddy grave. Oh, please. Please don't make me do that. I sighed, my mane itching from all the damp. I needed a bath. A hot bath. I stepped outside, coughing and spitting up more phlegm. I needed a few days' recovery, and I wasn't getting it. Even with the bullet holes healed, I could only hobble along. Pretty soon, I'd be as bad as P21. I slowly scanned the town, but my EFS was bare. She might have been in one of the houses, but I'd have to go into each one. The cool blue colors of the Delta pit box seemed to conspire with the rain to make the day as gloomy as possible. I looked towards Rosa's grave and felt relieved and saddened that no pony was there. I sighed and coughed again, wanting to go inside. If Thorn was like me, she probably wanted to be alone. Then a tiny pink pony inside my head smacked my brain hard and pointed out something in the road. A tiny rain-soaked rag. A horn puppet. No, No. Thorn wasn't like me. She still had some pony to go to. I ran to the puppet and saw the lavender filly running towards the bridge. I forgot about my cold and shivery body, and I ignored my aching legs as I started to run. I yelled out into the rain for her to stop. Had one of the Crusaders told her about the bridge? That she'd be with her mother on the other side? There was another pony on the bridge. A pony that caught her in her limbs and held her as I ran to catch up. Rampage, missing her armor, just held her in her hooves as Thorn sobbed horribly into her shoulder. I stopped, lungs burning, legs feeling as if they were about to break. Her cutie mark seemed to still, the rest blending away into the image of the teddy bear.
Shh. It's all right.
Thorn sobbed for Rampage as she hugged her close.
Shh. It's all gonna be okay,
she said as she held her. I struggled to tell Thorn to step away. For all three of us to return together. Don't make me shoot her in front of you. My eyes met Rampage's. I jumped into Sats, toggling 3 magic bullets. My useless, exhausted little horn let out an anemic flicker and went dark. Her teddy bear melted away.
You'll never hurt again.
The rain hissed as a crunchy pop filled the air.
It's okay. It's okay,
Rampage said softly to the bloody mass, a bony equine skull grinning at me from her flank.
It's okay. It's all right. You'll never hurt again.
Footnote. Level up. New perk added. Dealer's Ante. Every time you kill an opponent in Sats, the spell immediately regenerates 20% AP.